What's up, guys? First Effect 555, and I'm here with a basic 101 tutorial on how to use Photoshop. Now, today I'm using CS5. Now, if you have one that's lower, then it really makes no difference. Overall, they really only add in a couple different things each edition and like change the background and color. So it's not that big a deal. So yeah, so this is going to be on CS5, and I'm just going to teach you basically how to use all these tools over here on the sidebar and what they do, and some of the effects and things you can do, and how the layers work. But yeah, it's just a basic tutorial on how to use Photoshop. Let's jump right in. What I did to start off with is I just opened a new one and I always make it 920 by 1080 full HD and press OK, and I already have it open, but I always do it 1080 that way, because if I'm making something for YouTube, I want it to be full HD, so I go ahead and do that. Then I'll drag a picture in and adjust it to the size. That's one thing that when you bring it in, you see this big X thing going across, and that's how you adjust the size of it. And if you come outside of the box, you can rotate it. So yeah. And then always you can press Control Z to undo what you just did. For Windows though, you just Control Z it, and then when you're done, just double click, and then you have your picture. So obviously, as you can see, this right here, this first little tool right here is the move tool. You can move the picture around your canvas, and you have it down here in your layers. Now I always, no matter what I bring in, just because it lets you do more with it, you right click on the layer and rasterize it. That makes it where you can do anything with it, because before, when you originally bring it in, it's a smart object, and from there, like say if you wanted to erase it, you can't do it. It gives you the X. You cannot erase it. So I always rasterize it so you can do things with it. Okay, that's a big eraser. So you can erase it. Okay, so this is the move tool. Just move it around. This is a rectangle Marquee tool, and you can pick either elliptical or like a small row, like a single pixel, or bigger, and you can select with that a margin that you want to edit. And if you do that, like again, if you're erasing, it'll only erase in that part of that region that you've selected, nothing outside of it. And then to get rid of a selection, all you have to press is Control D, and that'll get rid of it for a little mapping on your keyboard so it goes quicker. So like I said, if you just right click, you can open up and get elliptical, and you can make circles and single row and single column. Now with the circle and with the rectangular, if you hold shift while doing it, or while pulling or expanding, it'll make a perfect circle, or with the rectangular it'll make a perfect square, or yeah, perfect square, instead of all this crazy stuff. If you were trying to get it perfect, just hold the shift. There you go. Now we move down into the lasso tools. Now the original one is just the regular lasso tool, and you can just draw around with your mouse to select exactly what you want. Go crazy with it. So like if I just want to free draw outline this guy, there you go. That's basically what it's for. And you can also move the selection around by clicking on it and moving it around. And then we have the polygonal, which is more of a click it and then drag, click, drag. And that's more if you want to get like in close and say you're trying to like get it along this line or something like that, and you want it to be more straight lines, then that's what that's for. And then we have the magnetic lasso tool, and that is, if we come over here, you have your navigator, you can zoom in here, you can click and it'll detect the color change, and you can just drag it along and it'll set its own points. Now I'm not clicking anything, I'm just dragging. Now it's not perfect, but see how it's mostly, for the most part, going along the outline here. Now if I bring it back up, obviously it's not going to be perfect, but there you go, it outlined somewhat, for the most part, along the edge of the snow here. So that's what that does. It detects by color. So, and then we have the magic wand tool. That is, it'll pick, for the most part, kind of like the magnetic lasso tool. It depends on color. So if I click down here, it'll it'll pick on most of that color tolerance. Now if you turn down the tolerance up here, like say 10, it'll pick less and more closer to that specific color that you originally click on. So that's obviously one small spot. And then if you bring it up, say 100, it'll select a lot because the tolerance is not as low. And then you have the quick selection tool. And this is more like a paintbrush because you paint it out and then it'll select that area that is mostly the same color, as you can see. So it outlined the guy there and just picked this portion. So like that, for the most part. And then if we go down, we have the slice tool, and you can slice a certain part out of it, and you can make that basically your picture. Just like it's basically like the crop tool, which is also in here. And that's how you can just pick and resize your image to whatever you want it to be. So say you just want it to be on this guy, you can make it be on that guy, but it doesn't mean it's gonna be it's gonna make it really small because that's a small part of the picture. But that's what that does. And then we have the color selector, or the eyedropper tool. I don't really call it that, and that picks whatever color it's over. So say you're painting something and you can't find in this big thing right here what exact color you are trying to get. You can just hold it down and go over until you find the color that matches or that you want. And the one on the bottom color is what it is right now, and the top one is what it'll be when you let go of the mouse, like what you're selecting. Okay. And how I pulled up that color selector palette is by coming over here to, it has to be on character, and pick color, and then you can select color, or that's mostly for text. You can come down here and click on this square, and then you can select from all the different colors here. Now if you're doing online pictures, you might want to click only web colors. It's a lot less like variety, but these are only the colors that they have basically for online. So just a little something that most people don't know. Okay, moving down the list. This is a patch tool. You can patch and make it, it's basically like you select, it's kind of hard to explain, but as you can see what I'm doing, if you want to repatch it with a different part of the picture that's already there, you can do that. It's kind of hard to explain exactly how it works, but that's what it does. So now he's floating over here, and it's cool because it like selects what's around it to fill it back in to make it like, obviously it's not perfect, but it basically looks like he's just floating there. So that's what that does. And then there's the paintbrush tool, and that you can change the size by coming up here, and you can change, like there's obviously pre-selected presets, or you can customly scroll or put the exact pixels in. And then the hardness is either how exactly hard it is or how soft. It's not as thick of a line. It fades more. So those are those. And then if you have downloaded, you can pick from a whole bunch, as I've downloaded a lot, of different paintbrushes, which are almost like stamps, really. You can just stamp them on there. So say I have like tech, you just stamp something on there. Cool stuff. And then there's speaking of stamps, the stamp tool. Now this is a very fun tool, I think, because this is a tool that you can use to pretty much erase people if you're really good at it. Zoom in here. Now what it does is, you'll press Alt if you're on Windows. Not really sure what it is for Mac. And you click. And it'll select that where you just, and you can bring it over. And it'll cover up. You can see the little cross on the left here. And it'll basically copy whatever's on the left where you clicked in general. And it'll follow. So you can mask people out of it. Now, obviously, I'm not really doing a good job here. I'm not taking my time, but you can get a whole photo, a picture of a picture of people. I'm stuttering right now, and completely mask them out, which is pretty cool. And then you can, it's like a paint. If you pick the right click and pick the pattern stamp tool, you can paint a pattern, which I really haven't had a use for me using Photoshop, but hey, it's there. That's what it does. Now, history tool brush. This, I'm not really sure what this does. Okay. Apparently it does that. I've never used this brush. I've only used the regular brush, which is a stamp. I've only used a regular brush, so I really don't know what that is for. But then we come down and we have the eraser tool, and you can just erase from your picture. Simple as that. If you have another layer, here, let's bring in another layer right here. Just bring in water, just because. And bring that below. If you have a layer on top and you erase it, it will reveal what's below it. That's how the layers work. It'll just show you what is below the top layer. And then you can completely turn off the different layers. So yeah. Magic Eraser is kind of like the Magic Wand tool, where it'll select certain parts of it and erase it depending on what the colors are. So again, you can change the tolerance and it'll change how much it erases. And then we have the paint bucket tool, which just paints in whatever color you've picked depending on the color area you picked it on. And you can also change the tolerance on those as well. And then the gradient tool. This one, you draw a line across and it'll put a gradient, as you can see up here, which you can change double clicking on this to change this side, so you want it gray, and double clicking on this side to make it white, and now it'll go from gray to white. And you just drag it across. You can do it any which way. And that's what that does. And then we have the smudge tool, which will smudge, hence the name, and it'll just drag out whatever you're working on and pull it forward or wherever you're dragging it to. And then we have the sharpen tool, which kind of just brighten things up, makes it more vibrant. Can't really tell on this picture, but that's what it does. It makes it more sharp. And then there is the burn tool, which makes things darker, burning it. Once again, this is kind of a bad picture to do it on. Kind of blurs it out a little bit too. No, this one makes it lighter. Stand corrected. As you can tell, I rarely use these. Then there's the dodge tool. Now this one makes it lighter. Okay. This is the one I've used before. This one makes whatever you have it going over, makes it brighter. Then the burn tool. I'm sorry, yeah, the burn tool. Makes it darker. Yeah, that's the blur. I was reading that wrong. Holy crap. I'm sitting here like, why does it say burn, but it's blurring it? Okay. That is the blur tool. This is the burn tool. Helps to read. And then we have the sponge tool, which takes out like the contrast. And then I really like this one. It's the pen tool. This is if you're trying to outline something, you can basically just make different shapes. And then you have this massive shape. If you come over here to paths, it shows your path. If I move this out of the way, you can see it better. That's the path I drew with the pen tool. Delete that. You can fill it with a color. Or you can outline it, or stroke it as it says. And you can change how big or small that stroke is with whatever you have selected as a brush, or you can just make it pencil and it'll be really small. So yeah, then we'll just delete that. And then if you have one drawn, I'm just going to make a triangle here. You can free draw, make another one, and then you can add points. Say I want one right in here, I can edit that more, or put one right here, put another one right here, then make it where you can edit it more than was already. So this one really has no points on the outside. You can add them in. So you can do stuff like that. Or you can subtract them so they're not there anymore. And we'll do some crazy stuff to make them connect again because the anchor points aren't there. So that's what that does. And then we have the convert point tool, which you can just drag along a certain point. If you click right here, you can convert it by without there really a point being there. You can move it around and stretch it and do stuff like that. And then we have a really basic text tool. And that's just, type something in like that. Really simple. You can change the type, the font up here, and the size, which I really don't worry about size. I just pick something large, and then if I want to scale it down, I just click off of it and then rasterize it. That way you can work with it and free transform it. And that's what I usually do when it comes to text size. And then they have a vertical type tool where it'll type it vertically up and down with it still being straight, which is pretty cool. And they have a mask one, or not. It just selects what it is you're picking, but if you make the mask black, you can see better what is just going to be selected. And then from here, if you want to move it, come up here and pick the rectangular marquee tool, and then you can move it around. So that way, if you want to, say, delete the words out of this picture, it'll do that. And then there's the same thing except going down like the other one, but it's masking. And then the path selection tool, which I never really use, but it's just basically for paths over here. You can pick which one you want. If I had drawn out like I was showing you with the pen tool, you can pick which one you want. And then there's shapes. I'm not really going to go into too much detail with that because these are simple. You can just draw things and it'll fill them in. Pretty simple. Nothing too crazy about that. And then the hand tool if you want to move around, which I'm not zoomed in, but if you zoom in and say you want to move around a page, the picture, that's what that does. And then rotate if you say you want to rotate it, that's what that does. But then of course it's annoying to get back into place. It's good enough, sort of. There we go. And then of course just the regular zoom. You just hold down the button and then pull down to the right to zoom in, and then you start seeing all the nice little pixels. Or click again and pull out to the left, and you'll zoom out again. Pretty simple. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the 101. Just showing you what all these do. And layers are pretty simple. You can just move them, and now that's behind. If I turn this one back on, it's in the front. These eyeballs show you what can be seen. If you turn this off, it won't be there. Like, it's still there, but you can't see it. And you can do different filters with it, changing how they look if you have a background to it. Say this is behind it. If you have a full background, it just changes what it looks like, which with this doesn't really look like much. So I'm not going to get too much into that because you can do a lot with that. I do that on a lot of my Photoshop pictures. I put a bring this back in the home. I'll have a picture, and then I'll bring like a colorful background or whatever into it. Say this, and then just change the setting on it, and it'll add an effect to it depending on what you want to pick. That one's kind of cool. But just depending on what you bring in, you can do some cool stuff with it. So that basically brings us to our conclusion of this tutorial. I mean, there's obviously a heck of a lot more you can do with Photoshop, but I am just not going to go into all of that because this is just a basic tutorial. So yeah, thanks for watching. First Effect. Peace.